Okay, grab your Bibles and turn with us to John chapter 18. All right, verse 25. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. So if we were to shoot a movie, it would basically take from verse 15 through 18, and we're kind of like scene change. We're going back to the scene that was next to the charcoals. All right, so verse 25. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. So, around the charcoal scene, so they said to him, "You also are not one of his disciples, are you?" He, Peter, denied it and said, "I am not." Verse 26, one of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, "Did I not see you in the garden with him, with Jesus?" Verse 27, Peter again denied it, and at once a rooster crowed. So that was his signal, his reminder, like, remember, this is where Jesus told you, you would deny me 3 times.
But also because he cut off that guy's ear and, he doesn't know if they want to kill him because of that, just the aftermath. So that's probably why he's doing it.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily to deny
exactly.
God, but just be like, I don't know what situation I'm in,
right.
and I don't want to provoke all these guys. Right. I'm outnumbered.
Right.
I'm like...
Exactly. And it's unfortunate because Peter is such a prominent apostle. His denial is on record. And probably because either Peter told John about it or John was also close by. But I'm going to guess
other
many...
disciple?
Yeah, the other, I know. But I'm going to guess many other disciples in this moment of scattering, out of self-preservation, they're like, I'm going to lie low. I don't know what's happening because Jesus just got arrested.
I'm a big, huge crowd.
Right. And Jesus also said, stop. We're going to do this in peace, right? So if Peter's like, yes, I'm with him. And then Jesus inside, what? You know what? They're going to have like these little fights, fist fights outside. Jesus already says, stop doing this. And you're right. He just cut off the ear. Yeah. So he could now be arrested for basically, target. Yeah. And so I think it makes sense. Verse 28. So they were in Annas's private house. Now they're going from Caiaphas's house to governor's headquarters. So this is where it's helpful to see the other gospels. So we do know that he goes to Caiaphas's house, the high priest. So he meets Annas separately, and then he meets Caiaphas. But John kind of jumps over it. And so now we're going to the governor's headquarters. So this is the Roman governor's headquarters. So this is another map over here, and we see him bouncing around. And John has a more highlight version, like a highlight reel. But if you bring Matthew, Mark, and Luke along, you'll see a more complete picture of the walking. In John, we don't have as many stops. It doesn't sound like Jesus is making a lot of stops, but when you put all 4 gospels together, we do see a lot more. So here he gets arrested in Gethsemane. That's what we started with, and John talks about that. Then he comes all over here, and we're going to guess that this is the place of the high priest. Then he goes from the high priest's house to the governor's house, and then from the governor's house, he gets bounced to Herod's. Herod is another governor that governs Galilee. So this first one, Pontius Pilate, he's the governor for Judea, so the south region of Israel. Herod, even though his office, it's like his office is in D.C., so his office is in Jerusalem, but he governs the Galilee area. So when Jesus finished being interrogated by the Jewish side, by the high priest side, first at Annas' house, then at the official high priest Caiaphas' office, then because they need, and then we'll talk about it, they need permission for capital punishment. They're not allowed to kill unless the Roman trial agrees, unless the Roman government gives permission. Jewish on their own, they cannot exact a capital punishment, which I think is fair. That makes sense. You have to have a Roman oversight. So there's a limitation to the high priest's power. So they try to elevate it. Basically, they appeal it. They push it into Pontius Pilate's court because Pontius Pilate is the main court for Judea. However, Pontius Pilate finds out, you're from Nazareth. Nazareth is Galilee, is the north state. So he's like, you handle it. And we see that Pontius Pilate really doesn't want to deal with it. So he pushes him over to Herod because he's like, Herod, this is your region. This guy is a resident from your area. Herod's like, well, I don't see anything wrong with him. He didn't do anything. So he bounces him back to Pontius Pilate. So Pontius Pilate sees him a second time. And then this is where we enter in from John verse 28. So there is a little bit of a section that is kind of skipped over, and probably because John was written last in comparison to the other 3 gospels. So it makes sense if John is like, I already know.
It's already covered.
Yeah, they already covered it. And, John also writes his gospel in a different layout So he's like, I'm very specific about what I want to highlight, what I want to talk about. If you want to know the nitty gritty about bouncing back and forth to the different houses, basically think about you're in DC and you're going from like Supreme Court and then you're going over to, I don't know, the Congress, Capitol building. Because it is pretty close. I mean, not close because you do still have to walk like 20 minutes around, but it's essentially like you bounce back and then you go to this other judicial building and then you go to this other legislative building and then you go to this other guy's office. And so it's like bouncing. So I can see how John's like, you can get that information elsewhere, but I'm going to tell you that final meeting where the final ball starts rolling to his crucifixion. Verse 28, then they led Jesus from the house. So there is a big jump summary here. So they go from the high priest, the house of Caiaphas, to the governor's headquarters. Now this is on the Roman side, the governor's headquarters. And then basically it no longer talks about all this bouncing back and forth, and it just jumps. It was early morning, and that makes sense because they arrested him like midnight, and they've already in still the darkness of early morning. They were already at Annas' house, then Caiaphas, and then Pontius Pilate, bouncing to Herod, and then back to Pontius Pilate. So probably sunrise is about to start. So it's early morning. Remember, there's this band of people that's escorting him, not in a nice way, but essentially like his security detail with this high profile prisoner. Yeah. And they're taking him around. So these people, including in the soldiers and the servants, there's also officials. So there's important people like politicians and maybe judges, local judges or leaders, right? So these Jewish people did not enter the governor's headquarters, did not enter into the Roman governor's headquarters because Roman is Gentile. So that's a Gentile house. They didn't want to enter it because it's about to be Passover. It might have already been Passover, but Passover lasts for at least 7 days. So as soon as they defile themselves, they can't participate in any of the festivities and the gatherings. So they're like, well, we need to convict Jesus. We need to get him killed right now. We can't wait. But I still need to be a part of all the important events, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
I still need to eat.
I still need to eat, and I still need to be part of the fancy galas and all the fancy events, whatever it is. So they're like, we can't enter. So there is a law back then that says they could enter an open sky courtyard, but if there's anything, a building or a house that has a roof, then they become ceremonially unclean. And then to re-clean yourself takes like a long process. So these people are like, okay, we're at the house. Jesus can go in, but we can't go in. So the group is out. So the leaders, the soldiers, the servants, the group, the band of soldiers and captains and officers are standing outside of Pilate's house, Pilate's headquarters. Jesus now probably switched over hands. He switched them over to the Roman guards because they're all Gentiles. So Jesus with the Roman guards go in to meet Pontius Pilate. So here, this next exchange, you're going to see Pilate keeps going outside, and then he comes back inside, going outside and coming inside. So Pontius Pilate, honestly, here, John actually does like a pretty kind description of him, showing that Pilate, he could say, you know what, if you're not coming into my house, you're not going to get my audience to listen to whatever you have to say. Come back when you're ready to enter in by my terms. But Pontius Pilate was like, okay, I will walk outside of my building and meet you outside. So it's like the Supreme Court justice saying, fine, you can't come into the courtroom. I will walk outside to the outdoor sidewalk steps and meet you outside. They could not be defiled so that they could eat the Passover. Verse 29, so Pilate went outside to them, to this Jewish band of group. And we think probably some of the high priest personnel now is with them as well. So not only the initial band of soldiers, captains and officers, probably some representatives from the ruling party is also there to convict and say, hey, we have an issue. We're escalating this to the Roman court. You need to convict this guy. You need to kill him. So Pontius Pilate went outside to meet all of them. This is them. And said, what accusation do you bring against this man? So against Jesus. Verse 30, they answered him. So the group of Jews, including the military soldiers, as well as now the ruling party, they answered him, if this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you. So they don't actually answer. The question is, what did he do? And they're like, well, if he wasn't doing something bad, we wouldn't have delivered him. Oh, well, what is it? And you see that they very cleverly and intentionally dodge the question. They are circumventing that question and just being like, clearly there's some issue. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But you're unwilling to answer truthfully, which means you truly have no grounds. You have no reason. And that's why you're playing this game, this smoke and mirror game. Pilate said to them, take him yourself and judge him by your own law. So Pilate is like, I'm not interested in dealing with your internal disputes. This is like your family dispute. Take it home and deal with it yourself. You have your own laws, your own religious laws. That has nothing to do with the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire only gets involved when it's like a insurgent, right? When you're threatening the Roman throne, right? But if you have some religious disagreement, like deal with it yourself. Deal with your own disputes. But the thing is, the Jews, they want Jesus dead, right? They want Jesus killed. But a couple years ago, the Roman government revoked the Sanhedrin rights to capital punishment. So currently in this moment, there is a judicial restraint. So the Jews, no matter what reason, you can punish, but you may not do capital punishment. So if you think about it, the Jewish capital punishment is stoning. So had the right not been revoked, they would have not had to escalate it up to the Roman government. The Jews would have just stoned him. And that's how Jesus would have died, through stoning. But from long ago in Old Testament, as early as Genesis and even in Moses' time, it's always foreshadowing a hanging on a cross, right? But the cross capital punishment is only a Roman thing. So the only way that Jesus can be killed from the cross is only if it gets escalated to a Roman judicial court. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
If he is tried and found guilty and charged for capital punishment in a Jewish court, it would only go to stoning.
Because that's all they did.
Correct. Because in Jewish law, hanging is cursed. Like you would never hang a person. It's like horror. So they would not hang. So then they stoned. And especially specifically, their claim is blasphemy, right? Blasphemy, blasphemy, blasphemy. So the capital punishment for blasphemy is stoning. So then our Christ would have had died by stoning. But throughout the whole plan, it was to die by hanging on a cross, on a tree, on a wood, right? So the only way this could happen is if the charge and the execution has to come from Roman law, Roman court in this time frame. So everything on earth had to come and coalesce to this moment. The Romans had to be in power, so it's not the Greek Empire anymore, it's the Roman Empire. It used to be that the Jews, the high priests, they could do their own capital punishment. A couple years ago, this right got revoked. And so now the Jews can't, no matter how bad this guy is, you can't kill your own prisoner. You have to get Roman court involved. Once Roman court is involved, then Rome decides on the execution method, timing, all that stuff, right? So it gets transferred over to their court. So all these things have to align so that the plan in which God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit had laid out from the beginning of time comes at hand. So it's a very small window of time where their rights for capital punishment was revoked. There was a judicial restraint on the high priest office, and the Roman government had to be involved. So it's just very interesting. But now we understand the Jews' frustration. Like they're unwilling to just say what, because they're trying to play. They're trying to power play the Roman court. They're like, I don't actually have reason, but I don't have the ability to kill him. I need you to kill him for me because I'm not allowed to, because my rights were revoked. Probably because the Romans were like, you guys cannot just hold these like private trials and start killing them, right? So the Romans are like, I need oversight. So you guys cannot be trying and killing people on your own. So if it comes to a capital punishment, you must involve the Roman court. But they have no actual reason for the Roman court to not only be involved, but also to try him. So now you see that they're trying to play it. And that's why at first it was a theological complaint against him. And then they have to create some political reason so that they can force and manipulate the Roman court to hand down an execution. So that's why the Jews then said to him, it is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. And this is what they're saying. It's not lawful for us. We are not allowed by Roman law to put anybody to death anymore, because at this moment in history, they had their rights revoked, probably because of corruption and mishandling. And so there was a judicial restraint on...
Because there's only one family running it.
Yeah, exactly. So much corruption. You cannot. And so that's why the Jews are like, I'm not going to tell you, but clearly he's done something wrong. But they know if they say it's a religious dispute, they'll just get pushed back into,
like,
you can't kill him, but you go deal with it in some other way, right? And so the Jews like, well, look, we're trying to be good Roman abiding. They're still trying to play into their power. Because the Romans are more powerful, right? So just like what you were saying earlier, it's all about power and manipulation and scheming.
It almost feels like they all want him gone, but nobody wants to be the actual person doing it,
Right.
or be the one actually responsible for it. But they all have this consensus of he should not be here, or something is wrong.
Right.
You know.
And because, early on privately, they said because we would lose our place, we would lose our power, our position, our money.
Yeah.
But they can't say that to the Roman government. The Romans would be like, I'm not going to be your minion, your killing minion,
Yeah.
just so that you can stay wealthy, stay powerful, stay in power, right? So they're being really coy about this. They're like, well, he did something wrong, clearly. Otherwise, we wouldn't have appealed and escalated to the big Roman court. And we're just trying to follow your procedures. We're just trying to follow, right? So this is what they're saying. Verse 32. And then John here, thankfully, gives us a footnote, a commentary insert here to help us understand. Because we're like, why are they playing this? And verse 32. This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken, to show by what kind of death, so this is crucifixion, Roman crucifixion, he was going to die. Because if not elevated to the Roman court, it would be by stoning. So the Jews had to find some political charge, and that's why they use treason, basically. They're like, oh, he's trying to be a king. So that's why they try to use this treason spin to Jesus. Basically, it's not even a half-truth. It's like a perversion of what Jesus was saying, so that they could manipulate the Roman court to try him for treason. Verse 33. So Pilate entered his quarters again. So he was outside talking to them like, guys, just handle this yourself. If it's a religious dispute, this is your own issue. And they're like, no, no, no. So Pilate is like, okay. So he turns back inside. He goes back inside because Jesus is inside his headquarters. So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? So now we know when he was outside, they were like, well, he said he was king. He said he was king of the Jews. And this area has always been tense with political tension because the Jews want their freedom, they want their king, they want their autonomy. So they were trying to spin it to Pontius Pilate like, hey, look, we found somebody trying to revolt, somebody trying to become king under the Roman government. We're just trying to be obedient, faithful Roman colony. We're just trying to tell you this guy's trying to start an insurrection. And then Pontius Pilate now comes in with this concept of king of the Jews. So he's like, okay, are you the king of the Jews? Is this your political agenda? So very clear, this is a political overtone. So he's trying to determine if Jesus indeed is threatening Roman imperial power. So he's like, are you the king of Jews? So verse 34, Jesus answered, do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? So he's asking, is it just because hearsay, like the Jews outside, that's what they're playing, that's what they're saying, that's how they're spinning the truth? Or do you know of some evidence that you have personally, right? Verse 35, Pilate answered, am I a Jew?
I don't know what you guys have going on.
Exactly. Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done? He's like, look, you guys have your own issues and your own rules, your own religious things. You have your own internal disputes. Look, I don't know what's going on, but your own people have turned you over to me. Now tell me, I need to know, what have you done? Because they're asking me to convict you, but I don't know. Nobody's telling me what you've done except this term, king of the Jews, right? Verse 36, Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting. So you're thinking his angels, like millions of however many he wants, would have been fighting so that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. He's saying if it really were a kingdom on this earth, one that rivals Rome or somehow actually threatens Rome's earthly kingdom, there would be defense. There would be protection. I would never have been bound up and being walked around, bouncing from building to building, court to court by these Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world. Essentially, he does answer Pilate's question. It's not of this 3D world that you are experiencing right now. I do have a kingdom, but it's not of this world. Verse 37, then Pilate said to him, so you are a king? And you can see Pilate is like, okay, cool. I just need to get to the point. Yeah. So you are a king, you're not a king. And then Jesus answered, you say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world to bear witness to the truth. So he's like, I'm actually born a king. People usually, you're born a prince, right? And then you become king. He's like, I was born as king already. but I was here for this moment. That's why I was born. That's why there was a baby in Bethlehem. That's why I became human form in a manger. And for this exact purpose, I have come into this world. Otherwise, I wouldn't, even though my kingdom is not of this world, I have entered into this world for this purpose, to bear witness, to tell and to tell and to tell about the truth, to tell the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. And this is the sheep. Everyone who is my sheep, they would hear me. They would listen. They would obey and follow my voice. And then verse 38, Pilate said to him, what is the truth? And this is really interesting as a question, because even today we're like, well, what is the truth? What is it? But Pilate also, you see, it's kind of dismissive, because you think about it like Greek philosophy, Roman philosophy. Pilate probably just thought Jesus is some abstract philosopher at that time, but he's like, okay, you're some abstract philosopher that talks about some concept, philosophical kingdom. Yeah, far off kingdom. Okay, that's cool. But
got going on,
right, that's fine, but you're not a threat to Rome.
Yeah.
I just need to know if you have like a military and you're about to take up in arms and you're about to fight the Roman Empire, and you're not, I don't care what kingdom you have going on, floating around what cloud, that's fine. Like, you're fine. We're fine. Everybody go home. Stop. No, nobody needs to be executed today.
Yeah.
No one is going against the Roman Empire. Caesar is still Caesar.
Yeah.
All right, let's go home. But the irony is that Pilate, his job is to find the truth, right? And yet at the end, he's like, right, what is the truth, right? Because he thinks this is just a philosophical thing. But the truth is Jesus Christ staring at him in the face. The truth incarnate is standing in his room, standing across from him right in that moment. And he had the opportunity to find out more about the truth. But he was like, okay, you do you, man. Like, I don't know. What, just get, I have a busy day. I got a lot of things to go to. And I have a group of angry Jews outside my door. Let's just make this go away. So after he said this, he went back outside. So here he is, because the Jews refused to come in here. So he had to go back outside to the Jews and told them, I find no guilt in him. He's like, look, I find no guilt in him. And we actually see Pilate repeats no guilt 3 times, a complete exoneration. Not, I didn't find that he wanted to be king. Not that I found that he didn't blaspheme. Just 0 guilt, no sin. He is completely innocent. He didn't steal. He didn't murder. He didn't treason. There's just nothing. I can't even find like a small thing against him, like shoplifting or something, or pickpocketing. I can't find anything. Verse 39, but you have a custom. They say, you Jewish people, you guys have a custom that I should release one man for you at your Passover. And right now is Passover, right? So do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? And he means this in like a positive way. Like, I mean, you guys have constantly wanted your king, right? Like, and this guy, even though he's not a military threat to Rome, he sounds like he's some kind of abstract philosopher about the Jews. So do you guys want him back? Because like, he's not a threat. Like, don't you guys want your freedom fighter? Like, don't you guys want him back? And so he probably thought this would appease them, but no. Verse 40, they cried out again, not this man, but Barabbas. So Barabbas, the word, it sounds like son of the father. Abba is father, like Abba, Abba. So his name is son of the father. And that's the irony, that it's the false one. He's not truly the son of God the Father, right? Now, Barabbas was a robber. So here we translate in certain versions as a robber, but this word actually means an insurrectionist. So he was an insurrectionist. In other gospels, they'll give you more information. Barabbas was a murderer. So people have pieced together other evidence about this person. It sounds like he was kind of like what you would call like a freedom fighter for the Jews. And then as he was revolting years ago, he murdered, probably intentionally, murdered some Roman soldiers, right? So he's fighting against the Roman government, fighting for Jewish freedom, and in the process murders, and there's theft too. So he's known also to have something with thieves. So maybe as he's doing his whole revolt, he has also stolen, damaged property, and murdered Roman soldiers, right?
The son of the father, huh?
Right? And his name is the fake version of son of the father. And so this guy, the Roman government absolutely has right to hold that guy, because he directly went against the Roman government, went against the Roman rule. He's like, Screw you. We're going to do our own thing, right? So the Romans have him held up in their prison. So when I was a kid and watching like cartoons, we see Barabbas as just like a crazy, bloodthirsty man. I think the Jews probably saw him as some freedom fighter. Like, okay, he's the Messiah we want. He's the one who's trying to fight for our freedom, going against the Romans. That's the guy we want. Bring him back out. But he's fake. He's the fake son of the Father. So it also alludes to this ultimate Antichrist, right? The Antichrist that says, I am, but you're not. And you look like you're a false teacher. You're false representation.
You represent everything opposite.
Correct.
Of what Jesus represents.
Correct. But then in that they're like, we want him. We want the guy who physically insurrection.
False sense of security.
That's right. We want the guy who went to jail. He went to jail for us, for fighting for our freedom. And that's the guy we want. We want a military guy that fights and kills. Yeah, kill more Romans because we hate them. We hate being under their rule. And they're like, give us him. Because when I was a kid, I used to think he was like a bloodthirsty serial killer. And I'm like, what? Wouldn't he come out and hurt the Jews? But now I realize he was actually by Roman law taken, not because of Jewish law, but by Roman law, because he was insurrectionist. He was going against Roman rules. So Roman's like, no, you cannot have an autonomy. You cannot be your own self-governing. You cannot have your own coins. You have to pay taxes, right? So there's like a ton of political tension. And so they saw this Barabbas as their freedom fighter, their guy. And Jesus, you said you're the Messiah. Why aren't you fighting? Why aren't you killing some Romans for us? Why aren't you making your own flag, making your own nation, making some of your own coins? Barabbas is going to do it for us. Look at him. He's sacrificed for us. He had to go sit in jail for us because he was fighting for our freedom. And Jesus is like, you don't even understand. The freedom that I'm trying to give you is beyond your understanding. The Messiah, the salvation I'm trying to give you is not of this world. So it is very sad. And here we know from the other Gospels as well, this crying out, like, a lot of times we think it's just like a mob mentality. But we later on from Luke and Matthew, they give us more information. We know that the chief priests and the Pharisees, they went and spread rumors and spread this sentiment. Yeah, they sent misinformation to get the crowd riled up so that they can then start aggravating in this way to Pilate. Because Pilate, later on we'll see, he's like, there's no guilt. There's no guilt. There's no guilt. To calm the Jews down, he gave in. He's like, all right, fine. We'll execute an innocent man. Even though I know he's innocent, we're going to execute this guy. Right? But because of this overwhelming pressure, so instead of standing and holding the line for justice and truth, he was like, all right, look. And who knows, maybe there's a ton of pressure, like, I don't want there to be an actual insurrection. And then now the Roman government comes in and is like, yo, Pilate, how are you so incompetent? Like, you need to get them under control. We don't know, but we know what's going to happen. But here it has us at a cliffhanger. They're saying, let this Barabbas guy go and take Jesus and kill him instead. Note that Barabbas was a murderer and he wasn't even executed yet. So he had a long list of his crime sheet, right? His profile has a long list of previous offenses, and he was still held in prison, not executed. But Jesus, within that day, gets executed. And so there is belief that that cross that was already prepared was probably for Barabbas.
Oh.
Right? Because that was really fast. Like, Barabbas was probably in court for a while. Even in our day and age, for death penalty, it takes a long time. Yeah. And then to have that cross made and ready. And so the idea that Jesus literally took his place, right? Jesus was not a thief. He was not a murderer. He was not an insurrectionist. He did not commit treason. And yet he took on those convictions that was on Barabbas and physically took his punishment. And then, so I think Spurgeon said, he does that for us. Like, we are thieves, we are dishonest. We are murderers in the sense that we hate each other. That's called we are murderers. And we are traitors. We are traitors of God the Father. He's faithful, but we are not. We had a covenant, and then we turn our backs all the time. We're adulterous. We're faithless. And Jesus Christ took our place on that cross. That cross was meant for us. Like, in reality, in spiritual reality, we all have a cross that we would die on. That's the payment for sin. And then Jesus Christ, literally that cross that was made for us, he is hanging on there. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. So John 18.